September 1942, Tehran. Cecil Beaton has come to Iran as an official British war photographer. His usual territory is Mayfair studios and Buckingham Palace anteroom portraits, not wartime capitals. But when he photographs Queen Fawzia of Iran, he abandons the clinical language of wartime documentation entirely. He calls her an Asian Venus. He writes of sad and mournful eyes, pitch-black hair, a perfectly sculpted face, and soft, graceful hands bereft of the wrinkles of labor. The British ambassador to Tehran, Sir Miles Lampson, said the same thing in fewer words. "I saw in her the most beautiful woman on earth." The photograph appeared on the cover of Life magazine, and the woman in it was already planning how to leave. If you watched the Soraya video on this channel, you know what happens when the Pahlavi dynasty requires a son and a wife can't produce one. Soraya Esfandiary-Bakhtiary, the woman the Shah loved most, divorced anyway, whose absence shaped the rest of his life, is the name most people associate with the Shah's discarded marriages. But before Soraya, there was someone else, a princess from Egypt. She went through the same machinery first. Her name was Fawzia Fuad. Within the first 30 seconds, here is what you need to know. The Shah ended his marriage to her, then ended Soraya's, then subjected a third wife to years of crushing dynastic pressure, all to produce a specific heir. That heir was 18 years old, studying in Texas, when the revolution came in 1979. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi hasn't been home in 45 years. He has never ruled. The machine consumed the wives and then consumed itself, and the one thing it bled everyone to produce is still standing outside, looking in. That's where this story ends. We start in Alexandria. Fawzia Fuad was born November 5, 1921, at Ras El Tin Palace in Alexandria, Egypt's summer royal residence on the Mediterranean, close enough to the sea to hear it from the palace gardens. Her father was King Fuad I, the first king of Egypt after independence from Britain, founder of the Muhammad Ali dynasty that had been ruling since 1805. Her mother, Queen Nazli Sabri, carried French, Turkish, Greek, and Egyptian lineage. Fawzia was the second of their 5 children. Her older brother was Crown Prince Farouk, who became King of Egypt in 1936. Her younger sisters were Faiza, Faika, and Fatia. Alexandria in the 1920s and 1930s was one of the most cosmopolitan cities on Earth. Egyptian, Greek, Italian, French, Jewish, and Armenian communities layered on top of each other in the port city, producing a culture that was simultaneously ancient and aggressively modern. The Egyptian royal family was itself a product of that cosmopolitanism. Albanian military roots, Ottoman influence, French education, European court customs. Fawzia was sent to school in Switzerland. She came out speaking Arabic, English, French, and Italian fluently, qualified to work as a simultaneous interpreter. She later obtained a pilot's license, reached the rank of captain as a professional sailor, and was a passionate scuba diver. She wasn't, in other words, the passive ornament that arranged royal marriages tend to produce in retrospect. She was someone with skills, interests, and a very clear sense of where she came from. The person who decided where to place her was her brother Farouk, acting in concert with Mohammad Reza Pahlavi's father, Reza Shah, ruler of Iran. The match was announced in June 1938. At the time, Iran and Egypt had been building a relationship for a decade. A trade agreement in 1928, an Iranian Chamber of Commerce in Cairo, the two countries described as closest regional allies by the mid-1930s. A royal marriage would cement all of that publicly and permanently. The Iranian Prime Minister described it as connecting the 2 oldest civilized dynasties in the world. That language, grandiose, historically ambitious, openly political, reveals exactly what Fawzia was being used for. Reza Shah had a second motive beyond the alliance. The Pahlavi dynasty had been founded only in 1925. Less than 15 years old at the time of the marriage, it had no historical weight compared to the House of Muhammad Ali, which had been ruling Egypt since 1805. Connecting his son to an ancient, established dynasty borrowed legitimacy the Pahlavis hadn't had time to earn on their own. There was one constitutional complication. Article 37 of Iran's 1906 constitution specified that the heir to the peacock throne had to be the son of a king whose mother is a princess and of Persian race. Fawzia was Egyptian. Her children would face a constitutional obstacle to the throne. Reza Shah resolved this by having Parliament formally declare Fawzia a Persian. The machine, encountering a wall, simply moved the wall. Fawzia was 17 at the ceremony. By one account, she had met her future husband approximately 3 days before the wedding. The marriage was solemnized on March 15, 1939, at Abdeen Palace in Cairo. A second ceremony followed in Tehran per Shiite custom. On the same day in Europe, Germany was completing its occupation of Czechoslovakia. The newlyweds flew toward Tehran, while the political order that had arranged their union was already beginning its collapse. Tehran in 1939 wasn't Alexandria. This requires a moment to understand clearly, because it matters for what follows. Tehran sits directly at the foot of the Alborz Mountains, a range that rises immediately north of the city to nearly 5,600 meters, snow-capped from late autumn through late spring, visible from most of central Tehran on a clear day. The ski resorts at Dzin and Shemshak, both within an hour of the city center, are world-class by any standard. The city gets genuine winter. Isfahan, the country's other great royal city, is something else entirely. Nakhche-Jahan Square, one of the largest public squares on Earth, is ringed by architecture faced with blue and turquoise tilework that has been drawing visitors for 400 years. None of this is dusty outpost geography. Iran is a civilization with a capital worth seeing. What isolated Fawzia in Tehran wasn't the landscape. It was everything the landscape didn't control. The Pahlavi court was insular and cliquish, built around families whose loyalty the young Shah was still cultivating, and whose skepticism of a foreign queen was immediate and permanent. Fawzia was an outsider in every direction. Not Iranian by blood, not yet fluent in Persian, not connected to any of the networks that controlled access to the Shah or to social standing. She learned Persian eventually, reportedly speaking it with, as her husband later noted, a very likable French accent. She fulfilled visible obligations. She attended enough events to maintain appearances. On October 27, 1940, she gave birth to a daughter, Princess Shahnaz Pahlavi. She tried. The court made trying almost impossible. The Shah's twin sister, Princess Ashraf Pahlavi, was by multiple accounts the most formidable woman in the household, a negotiator who would later force Stalin to extend a planned 10-minute meeting into 2.5 hours and leave with his genuine respect. By several accounts, she worked systematically to make Fawzia's life at court untenable. The Shah's biographer, William Shawcross, states plainly that Fawzia's jealous sister-in-law and scheming mother-in-law made her life intolerable. The mother-in-law was Taj ol-Muluk, the Queen Mother, a small woman described as having a personality like a bulldozer, the one person in the household who didn't flinch when confronted with Reza Shah. She had dominated the royal household for years and had no interest in sharing that dominance with a teenage Egyptian bride who showed no inclination to submit to it. Then, Reza Shah abdicated. The Allied invasion of Iran in September 1941 forced him out. His son, at 21, became Shah of Iran. From that moment, the constitutional weight of the Pahlavi dynasty settled entirely onto Mohammad Reza's shoulders. And that weight had a specific shape. Article 37 required a male heir. Princess Shahnaz, born in 1940, didn't satisfy that requirement. ACIA, intelligence document from 1972, described the problem with typical bureaucratic flatness. The Constitution states that the oldest son of the Shah is the heir to the throne, but Mohammad Reza had no son. That document was written 31 years into his reign. He had been carrying this deficit since 1940. By 1944, Fawzia was seen an American psychiatrist in Tehran. She described the marriage as loveless. She desperately wanted to return to Egypt. The depressive episodes were serious enough to require clinical treatment. This isn't inference or second-hand court gossip. It's documented. The Shah, in private conversation with the British ambassador during this period, identified the main obstacle to Fawzia's return: his mother. Taj ul-Muluk was probably the main obstacle, the Shah said. Not Fawzia's unhappiness, not the air pressure, his mother. The machine had a face, and the Shah himself named it. Cecil Beaton photographed Fawzia in 1942, while all of this was already in motion. The portrait went on the cover of Life magazine that September. The woman in that photograph, whom Beaton called Asian Venus, whom the British ambassador had called the most beautiful woman on earth, had been in clinical treatment for depression. The gap between that cover image and the life behind it's the whole story of what the machine was doing to the people it was processing. In May 1945, Fawzia moved permanently to Cairo. Her daughter Shahnaz was 4 years old. She filed for divorce in an Egyptian court. Egypt recognized the divorce in 1945. Iran didn't recognize it for 3 more years. The Shah made numerous attempts to persuade her to return. She refused, consistently, over 3 years. She stayed in Cairo. King Farouk, the brother who had arranged the marriage, now demanded the couple divorce. The political alliance the marriage was supposed to cement had served its purpose and then started fraying. The bridge no longer needed to be maintained. The official announcement of the divorce was issued in both countries. The Egyptian announcement said, "The Persian climate had endangered the health of Empress Fawzia, and thus it was agreed that the Egyptian king's sister be divorced." The Shah added his own statement, "The dissolution can't affect by any means the existing friendly relations between Egypt and Iran." The climate. The official account blamed the weather. In his 1974 memoir, written 26 years after the divorce, the Shah offered a different account, that the main cause of their separation was Fawzia's inability to bear a male heir. That explanation, constructed in retrospect after 2 more marriages and the eventual birth of Crown Prince Reza, has the texture of a story told backward from its ending. In 1948, publicly, the weather had done it. The gap between those 2 accounts, the official climate statement and the private air failure explanation, is exactly where the machine operated. It never stated what it was actually doing. It produced polite fictions and kept moving. The Iranian divorce was officially finalized on November 17, 1948. Fawzia reclaimed her title as Princess of Egypt. She lost all Iranian royal designations. Princess Shahnaz remained in Iran as a strict condition of the divorce settlement. She was 8 years old when the paperwork was complete. No documented contact between mother and daughter from this period survives in the available historical record. This is where the story fractures, and it's worth letting it fracture honestly. There's a genuine debate about Fawzia, and both sides of it are saying something real. The first position: she was wronged. She was placed inside an institution at 17 that she never chose, arranged between powerful men before she had met the groom. She lived in a court where the Shah's mother held her in contempt, and the Shah's twin sister worked to make her life impossible. She was under relentless pressure to produce a male heir, which reduced her to a biological function she either couldn't or didn't fulfill. She developed clinical depression requiring psychiatric treatment. The marriage was, by her own account, loveless, and when it finally ended, the official explanation blamed the Iranian climate. The actual terms of the settlement took her daughter. The whole arrangement, selection, placement, pressure, expulsion, treated a human being as a diplomatic instrument. The machine didn't stop running when Fawzia left, it just moved on to the next woman. The second position. She was an active agent of her own departure, and pretending otherwise flattens her into a victim she may not have been. She learned Persian inadequately and by choice, not inability. She refused court social obligations that she could have fulfilled. She filed for divorce herself. She extended Cairo visits until they became permanent relocation. She refused 3 years of the Shah's requests to return. These aren't the actions of someone trapped and helpless. They are the actions of someone who understood exactly what was happening and chose exit over accommodation. After the divorce, she retained her title, her property, her status in Egypt. She remarried within a year, at a palace ceremony, to a high-status diplomat. The Be Pragmatic faction notes that she had options and she used them. What neither position can comfortably absorb is the daughter. Shahnaz Pahlavi grew up in Iran without her mother. She was 5 when Fawzia left for Cairo, 7 when the divorce was finalized. Whatever constraints shaped that outcome, and they were real, and they were imposed by men with institutional power, the result was a child raised without a parent, in a foreign country, inside the court that had driven the parent away. Ardashir Zahedi, who married Shahnaz and therefore knew both the mother in Egypt and the daughter who had grown up in Iran without her, said of Fawzia, "She is a lady and never veered from the path of purity and fidelity." It's a generous sentence. It's also a sentence from a man uniquely positioned to know how much damage the divorce had done to his former wife. On March 28, 1949, 4 months after the Iranian divorce was finalized, Fawzia married Colonel Ismail Hussein Shireen Bey at Queen Palace in Cairo. He was 30 years old, a graduate of Trinity College, Cambridge, an Egyptian diplomat, a former Minister of War and the Navy, and a distant cousin. Multiple sources describe the second marriage as a true love story, far happier than the first, the marriage in which she found her balance and fulfillment. The couple had 2 children, a daughter, Nadia, born in 1950, and a son, Hussein, born in 1955. When King Farouk was deposed in the Egyptian military coup of 1952, and most of the royal family fled into exile, Fawzia was permitted to remain. Her connection to the new revolutionary regime through Colonel Shireen's military network protected her. She lost all remaining official royal titles and ceremonial roles. She ran the Mabareh Mohammed Ali charity, focused on education and women's empowerment. She lived quietly in Mahdi and Alexandria. She never published a memoir. She never gave an interview about the Shah, about Tehran, about Shahnaz, about any of it. One scholar describes her final decades as isolation and silence. That framing is accurate, but perhaps too passive. She didn't accidentally fall silent. She had the platform, had she wanted it. The former Queen of Iran, photographed by Cecil Beaton, described as the most beautiful woman on earth, at the center of one of the defining royal stories of the 20th century. Journalists would have come to her. She simply didn't let them. The silence was dignity. Or it was damage so deep she couldn't form it into words. Probably both, at different moments of a very long life. We don't know. She didn't tell us. She died on July 2nd, 2013, at age 91. Her funeral was held the following morning at the Sayyida Nafisa Mosque in Cairo. She was buried next to Ismail Shireen, who had died in 1994. She had been widowed for 19 years. She outlived the Shah, outlived Soraya, outlived King Farouk, outlived Princess Ashraf, outlived Taj ol-Muluk, outlived almost everyone who had held power over any chapter of her story. The oldest surviving member of the deposed Muhammad Ali dynasty, buried next to the man she had chosen for herself. Now the pattern becomes visible. The CIA intelligence report on Iran from 1972 compressed 3 marriages and 21 years of dynastic crisis into a single paragraph. A first marriage to Fawzia, King Farouk's sister, was primarily a political move. The only issue of this marriage, which ended in divorce after 11 years, was a daughter. In 1950, the Shah married Soraya Esfandiary, who produced no children and was divorced in 1959. His marriage in 1959 to Farah Diba, a Parisian-educated member of an old but somewhat impecunious family, was followed at last by the birth of 2 sons as well as 2 daughters. At last. 21 years of constitutional deficit and human cost, compressed to, at last. That is the machine's own paperwork, and it's colder than anything this script can say about it. Soraya Esfandiary-Bakhtiary married the Shah on February 12, 1951. She was 19, raised in Berlin, educated in Switzerland and London, the daughter of a Bakhtiari nobleman and a German mother. She is widely described as the woman the Shah loved most deeply. The British ambassador reported that the Shah was a man at an emotional crossroads at the time of the divorce, simultaneously relieved to be able to remarry and unable to face what he had just done. She wore Christian Dior's silver lame to the wedding, studded with pearls and trimmed with marabou feathers, weighing 66 pounds. She nearly collapsed under its weight. She had only recently recovered from typhoid, which had delayed the wedding by 6 weeks. The ceremony kept moving regardless. American doctors confirmed her infertility in 1954 in a Boston clinic on what the Shah had hoped would be a reassuring medical consultation. The Shah's mother, Taj ol-Muluk, the same woman who had helped drive Fawzia out of the Tehran court, applied the same pressure she had applied before. She told her son it was his duty to father a son to continue the house of Pahlavi. In March 1958, the Shah gave Soraya an ultimatum: accept polygamy or accept divorce. She refused to share him. The divorce was announced on March 14, 1958. Soraya issued a public statement from her parents' home in Cologne. It named, more clearly than any official document had named it during Fawzia's divorce, exactly what the machine demanded. Since His Imperial Majesty Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi has deemed it necessary that a successor to the throne must be of direct descent in the male line from generation to generation to generation, I will, with my deepest regret, in the interest of the future of the state and of the welfare of the people, sacrifice my own happiness, and I will declare my consent to a separation. She received a $3 million Paris penthouse, a monthly allowance of $7,000, a 1958 Rolls-Royce Phantom 4, a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, and several pieces of significant jewelry. She spent the next 43 years in Europe. When the Shah was dying in exile in 1979, she wrote to him saying she still loved him and wanted to see him one last time. He wrote back saying the same. She was preparing to travel to Cairo when he died. She died in her Paris apartment in October 2001 at 69, cause of death officially undisclosed. Her belongings were auctioned in 2002 for more than $8.3 million. Now, one correction that matters, because some versions of this story frame it as 3 discarded wives, and that framing is factually incomplete, and informed viewers will notice. Farah Diba wasn't discarded. She married the Shah on December 21, 1959, at the Hall of Mirrors of the Golestan Palace in Tehran. She was 21, studying architecture in Paris, and introduced to the 39-year-old Shah at an embassy reception. She was brought into the Shah's orbit partly through Princess Shahnaz, Fawzia's daughter, now a young woman who had grown up in Tehran without her mother, who inadvertently connected her father to the woman who would give the machine what it required. Crown Prince Reza was born in 1960. Farah was crowned empress in October 1967, the only of the three wives to hold that title. The old designation of queen formally abolished and replaced at that coronation. She was appointed regent in the event of the Shah's premature death. She went into exile with him in January 1979. She was at his bedside in Cairo on July 27, 1980. The machine consumed Fawzia because she didn't produce a male heir. It consumed Soraya for the same reason. It didn't consume Farah. She gave it what it required, and it kept her. That is its own kind of terrible logic. The irony of what followed belongs to history, not to any particular wife. January 16, 1979. The Shah boards a Royal Boeing 707 at Mehrabad Airport in Tehran. He is described publicly as taking a vacation. He is in fact carrying stage 4 chronic lymphocytic leukemia, secretly managed for years, his spleen massively enlarged. He never comes back. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son for whom everything had been arranged, for whom Fawzia's marriage had been ended and Soraya's heart had been broken, and Farah had endured years of dynastic pressure before the birth, was 18 years old. He was studying in Texas. He watched the revolution from the United States. The Shah spent his final 18 months passing through Morocco, the Bahamas, Mexico, Panama, New York, and finally Egypt, the country where his first wife had lived, where the house of Muhammad Ali that had given him Fawzia had once ruled. Anwar Sadat gave him asylum. He died in Cairo on July 27, 1980. His documented final words to Empress Farah, "I wanted to see our boy on the throne." He didn't. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi lives in Washington, D.C. He is 65 years old. He speaks regularly about Iran, about the Islamic Republic, about what a democratic transition might require. In March 2026, he addressed a conference in Texas, still the state where he had been studying when his father fled. He maintains a political platform. He is recognized in certain circles as a potential figurehead for Iran's future. He hasn't returned to Iran, not once in 45 years. A 2024 profile stated it plainly. Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the son of the last Shah of Iran and heir to the peacock throne, hasn't been home in 45 years. Neither has his wife, Yasmin. The specific human being for whom Fawzia's daughter was left in Tehran, for whom Soraya's statement sacrificed her happiness in the interest of the future of the state, for whom Farah endured the dynastic anxiety of years before his birth, that person has spent his entire adult life watching Iran from outside, unable to return, never having ruled a day. Fawzia's chapter in the previous video on this channel was 3 sentences. She generated more viewer engagement from those 3 sentences than almost anything else in that video. The audience felt the gap and asked for the rest. So, she was born in Alexandria in 1921, a princess of one of the world's oldest ruling dynasties, educated in Switzerland, multilingual, accomplished, a pilot, a sailor, a diver, someone with a full life before any man decided where to put her. She was placed inside a marriage at 17, deposited in a foreign court that found her contemptible, pressured for a son she didn't produce, officially divorced for the weather, her daughter left behind in a country that wasn't hers. She went home. She rebuilt. She married a man she apparently loved and built a quiet life in Alexandria. She ran a charity. She outlived almost everyone. She never said one public word about any of it for the remaining 65 years of her existence. The silence is the measure of the machine's power, not because Fawzia had nothing to say, but because the conditions of her survival required saying nothing. She kept her dignity by keeping her silence. And that is either admirable or devastating, or both, depending on which side of the debate you find more convincing. She died July 2, 2013, buried next to the man she had chosen for herself, having outlived every person who had ever held power over any chapter of her life. The machine kept running after she left it. It consumed Soraya. It pressured Farah through years of dynastic anxiety. It produced its heir. Then the revolution came, and the machine destroyed itself, and the throne it had produced everything to pass on collapsed before the heir could sit on it. 3 women, 1 machine, 1 heir in permanent exile. That's not a moral. It's just the arithmetic. Subscribe for more stories like this.